Okay, imagine this. A Serbian starts training kickboxing in 2013, and only 2 years later, he decides to take his first flight in his entire life, flies himself to Hawaii, starts surfing before 1 year later flying to Alaska to take up a mixed martial arts career, knock out 5 straight opponents, and get his opportunity on the grandest stage in all of combat, the Ultimate Fighting Championship. The 6'1" Uros Medic is 3-1 in the UFC and has never been to a final bellwether win or lose. With highlight reel knockouts at both lightweight and welterweight, he looks to continue his streak to 3 straight UFC victories. You can catch a majority of Uros Medic's fights, both regionally and obviously in the UFC, on UFC Fight Pass. He has been training and fighting in different forms of martial arts since 2013, but began that career in kickboxing. He came to the US again on his first flight ever in 2015, and he flew into Hawaii, spending some time surfing before making a home in Alaska and fighting in the Alaska FC. This was one of the organizations featured on Dana White's Looking for a Fight series. A long and tall welterweight, again beginning his career as a kickboxer, his pride came from TKOing his opponents, and that would make up 4 of his 5 wins in the regional Alaska FC. He'd have competitive rounds against Nathan Fitoza, being put on his back, but the power was the great equalizer against all of his opponents, and he was finishing guys at will. Uros Medic would get his Contender Series debut at what was a relatively early part of his martial art career, only being 5-0, and he would take on a 7-1 exciting Mikey Gonzalez on a Contender Series performance, but that didn't stop him from coming into the contest as the favorite. And this Contender Series fight would absolutely bang for the less than half a round it lasted. We knew in hindsight that this fight would shape up to be the banger that it was. It was really good matchmaking, bringing in Mikey Gonzalez, who has an extremely exciting fight style. The best way I can describe him is kind of like Stephen Wonderboy Thompson on steroids, in my opinion. He literally threw 5 spinning wheel kicks in the very first minute of the fight, but nonetheless, the champion kickboxer in Uros Medic would rip him to the body with body kicks and ultimately drop him and finish him with ground and pound, earning his 6th straight stoppage victory and ultimately forcing Dana White to bust out that contract and bring Medic up to the main roster. He would balloon from plus 105 for his opening UFC fight to around the 2-1 favorite at minus 200. The height was nearly identical coming into the fight against Aalon Cruz, which would be his debut fight, but the reach, Medic gave up nearly 7 inches in reach, but was able to put on a serious statement win in the spot where he hurt Aalon Cruz in the very first minute of the fight. The onslaught of brutal strikes to hurt Cruz had Cormier and Rogan begging Mark Goddard to stop the fight, but ultimately Medic would win at 1 minute and 40 seconds into that very first round, and in my opinion, this was the peak of Medic's stock so far in his career. This fight was not supposed to be a blowout. This dominant display had little denying that he was really pushing from becoming a prospect to a serious contender in the lightweight division, seriously coming from a regional scene where he fought most of his fights at welterweight, and being 6 feet tall, he was actually a rather big and powerful striker for the division. Interestingly, still early in Medic's career, the UFC wouldn't pair him up with an easy fight to pad the highlight reel. The UFC would line him up with another surging undefeated prospect when Medic was faced with Jalin Turner, who was also on a 2-fight win streak and submitted his last opponent in the very first round and had near 15 fights of professional experience, while being super long for the division, really taking away from Medic's strengths from the lightweight division. Medic would edge the favorite spot by little more than 5% difference in implied win percentage, so this spot was relatively, at this point, again, Medic's biggest career opportunity. It opened in Turner's favor with him landing a takedown and Turner getting on top for a little bit of the round, but it was actually the surprising time when Medic was able to get back to his feet, and a surprising left and then big left to the body would hurt Medic and have Medic stumbling back to the fence, where Turner showed very good composure and power that we've seen in brief stints of Jalin Turner's career, and he was able to drop Medic before landing a back-to-back rear naked choke submission, putting Medic away and taking his O on that September night. The UFC would not do Medic any favors in his bounce-back fight. He would take on Venezuelan Omar Morales, who was an explosive striker, but the serious part was he had never been finished, so no matter what, if Uros Medic was going to win, it was thought that he was going to have to go through a 3-round war against a guy super explosive that can take your head off at any point. Entering the UFC, Morales also TKO'd his opponent on the Contender Series the year prior to Medic, and the Turner loss still burning in the minds of odds makers, Uros would open up as the underdog. And finally, when the day came, the stage was set for Medic to bounce back from his first loss ever to see how he would do off of a defeat. Medic was woken up early by the boxing of Morales with a counter right hand, but again, in a stand-up kickboxing fight, Uros Medic proves time and time again that he is a very, very challenging puzzle to figure out. He was ducking under looping strikes and defended a lot of Morales' attacks. He held Morales to 32% significant strike accuracy in that first round and capped it all off with a knockdown very late into the round. And Medic, who was primarily on the back foot in that first round, came out a little more aggressive in the second round. He began holding his ground and entering and exiting the pocket at will. While the time was sliding past the first half of the second round, Uros Medic feinted into a massive left hook that stunned and dropped Morales to the fence, and then Medic would land two more identical huge left hooks before putting Omar Morales away. This was, again, Morales' first loss via TKO, so a super impressive bounce back spot for Medic, and it was Medic's 8th stoppage victory. And from that spot, the next time we would see Medic, it would be a very interesting spot for him. He would be the 2-1 underdog. He would come in on short notice. And when he came to the UFC, he went from welterweight on the regional scene to lightweight. In this fight, on short notice, he would be going back to his regional weight of 170 to take on Matthew Semelsberger, again as a 2-1 underdog. And with all of that in favor of his opponent, Medic would stop Semelsberger in the third round with a beautiful spinning back fist. And again, continuing his dominant and impressive stoppage win streak, improving it to 9 wins by TKO or submission. Uros Medic is a very, very scary striker when it comes to the lightweight division, and he is not too shabby on the ground. We've seen him defend. Once taken down, we've seen him get back to his feet. He's very active on the ground when he's put on his back. It's going to take a really good wrestler to try and implement that game plan, and the only real skip in his game was that Jalin Turner fight when Jalin Turner looked like a world beater. Jalin Turner is super long, super dynamic in both the striking and the grappling. So other than that, Medic is going to be probably a very dominant lightweight in the years to come, especially being so young in his career. But that'll do it for today's episode, guys. If you enjoyed, remember to smash that like button and subscribe to Combat Sports Central, and I will see you in the next one.